Hello, Tansei. My name is Danielle, also known as the Squamish Medium, and welcome back to Spirit School. This is what's on my heart and on my mind today, and that is simply about the unseen helpers that surround us and guide us. One of my favorite quotes that I've come across on the spiritual path is, "If you knew who surrounded you, you would never be afraid." And that is true from what I've seen through doing thousands of readings. Even if you don't believe in guides, even if you don't believe that the ancestors are guiding you, they are there regardless. So why not call in these allies or become familiar with them, become in relation with them? What would happen if you were to develop this relationship with your spirit helpers? Something I've podcasted on a lot. I've given the story about my main guide, Skylar, many, many times on this podcast, going back to episode 1. And the truth is, as I started to develop my mediumship and, work with the world of awareness, it was actually the realm of the spirit guides that I developed my faith in first. I always believed in mediumship and mediums and watching them on TV, Sylvia Browne, John Edwards, even Derek Acora. In my teenage and my youth, I never doubted that people could do this. But one of the first things that I had to heal within myself in mediumship was the fact that I could do this. The fact that spirit would choose me as a communicator. I never really believed that. And what eventually broke that spell was a quote that Spirit gave me, and it's very short and simple, like much of the things that the spirit world says to me are very profound and simple. And they simply said, "Why wouldn't we use you?" And that seemed to really break that spell. So spirit guides were the first realm I started to develop my faith in early mediumship development classes, as we're building up our discernment and we're building up our energy and we're building up our awareness. One of the ways that our teacher did this was have us meditate and ask our spirit guides for a sign. Now, entering the mediumship development space, very skeptical again that I could do this, I said, whoever surrounds me, this needs to be physical. It has to be physical, or I'm not going to believe it. Some people would say, I see a rainbow in my third eye, and I know it's my guide, or I hear something, and I love mediums who can hear. I think they're the most fascinating and profound mediums. And some people said, I can just hear them. And none of that seemed to be the case for me. And so I started working with physical signs that my guide was there, and I have one, and it developed for over a year. It took me to develop a level of faith that in fact was them. And it wasn't until I started experiencing this physical sign, just living my life, driving or on a lunch walk with colleagues, and I would get this sign when I wasn't even asking for it, that I just didn't feel alone. I didn't feel alone. So if you're interested in this topic and you haven't started that journey, I just simply invite you to just put yourself in a state of presence, of centeredness, and just place a thought through your heart, but of course through your mind as well, to the spirit world. I would love to know of your presence. How could I know of your presence? And just see what unfolds. Quickly sharing a story of a time where I felt like I had a lot of faith, and my faith was tested in a lot of ways, in a non-biblical way. It was really tested. And to share the story quickly, I was, helping my cat transition, and just trigger warning, pet loss, because that's a really deep grief that I don't think we talk enough about. But because I'd been developing and practicing as a medium at this point for about 7 years, for some reason I felt like I was special, maybe, and I would pray to the unseen world that I had really ultimate faith in by this point, just simply asking for some mercy. And in short, no mercy was granted. The opposite of mercy was granted. It was actually a compounding traumatic experience for me that I could still cry at the drop of a hat recalling. And my faith was tested at that point. And I really entered a level of grief I had never experienced before. I'm even stumbling talking about it. I can feel it as I, bring it up. And, the most divine beings that I feel like I was in relation with didn't come through for me. And this was a huge part of my spiritual maturity journey, because in truth, in the human experience, we are all incredibly equal. Whether we devote our lives to the spirit world or to faith or a community, none of us are void of the full human experience and its full spectrum of emotion and experience. We all experience birth, grief, and loss. And I don't know why I thought it couldn't hit me as hard, but it did. So my faith was kind of shattered at that point. And it was about a month after my loss that I found myself exactly in this spot where I sit right now. And I took myself through a centering, through a meditation, if you will, of just becoming present. And without even searching for it, I could see my cat in my mind's eye, in the world behind my eyes. And it was so real. I was happy. For the first time, I had a smile on my face. I could feel my heart expand with love, like love broke through the grief. It was an incredibly profound experience, one that moved me to tears. And as it started to dissipate, the grief came back, and like almost like a balloon coming in, the grief overshadowed that love again. And I placed a thought to Skylar, my main guide, the one that I had ultimate faith in. And I said to him, what if I get home, aka to heaven, and I realize I made all of this up? That's how much faith I had lost in myself, in spirit, in divine, in divinity. And I heard a thought come in that made no sense to me. And the response from Skylar was, that's because spirit communication is a transfer of thought. I was like, okay, thank you. I heard that come through really clearly, but the experience I had was very emotional. It had nothing to do with thought. So I said, okay, thank you. And I get up and I go to my bed, turn on my lamp, and I pull out this book I've been trying to read for many years. It's from the 1800s on mediumship by Allan Kardec, if you know who that is. And so I pick it up and I finish the page and I turn it over. And the whole next section of the book is titled, Spirit Communication as a Transfer of Thought. And immediately my heart opened, and it was like this moment of like faith restoration where my guide sent me on this little cookie crumb experience that ended up being evidence that they were around and that my experience was real. And this all happened within 30 seconds, maybe a minute max, the whole thing, from the visualization dissipating to me picking up that book and reading that. And I felt like they had to get through to me really quickly that time, because it never really happens that quickly. Some things that the spirits that guide me, they will drop something in for me, and for the next 2 years, sparingly, little pieces will fill in, and what I'm left with is a teaching or like a story. And like, this is the stuff that keeps me on this path. Like, I have not ventured off of this path in 13 years because of this relationship developing and these quests and these side journeys that the unseen world sends me on. And that one was the most profound for me because, you know, it was a moment of grace. If we look at grace in the definition of turning fear to love, or, you know, transmitting dark into light. Like, for a month, I was really slipping, and it was that one thing that was so evidential to me that broke the spell or brought me back. And these are some of the blessings that you get when you develop this relationship with the unseen world. Speaking of blessings from the guides, I was hosting a retreat in the woods. We go to the same place every year. We just had our 4th year. And as I was preparing the curriculum for Wednesday, our midpoint, it was all dedicated to connecting with the light of nature, the light of the spirit world, the elements that surround us. And as I was, you know, preparing for that session about a month before the retreat, my guides, my spirit helpers, Skylar, Joseph, like all these beautiful guides came forward, and I heard a collective message from them. And they said, during returning to the light, that's the session that I was working on, we want you to introduce them to us. And that was so exciting for me. They also said, we assure you magic. I was like, okay, if you're assuring me magic, then we will do this. And I got so excited about the idea because they've never mentioned it and it's never crossed my mind. Even though I talk about my guides often, I converse with them, I receive a lot of inspirations. And I've been hosting communities for 6 years online and in person. It never occurred to me to do this. So I got a general sense. They gave me a little bit of a preview of how we should set up the room and overall a sense of what was going to happen. But they did leave a lot of space for magic. So what happens for me is I'm in the realm of connecting with the inspirers, the guides. What I do, especially for these more sacred experiences, is I get a little bit of a preview, but I essentially close my eyes and I say what I am experiencing and seeing. And so they created this really powerful exercise around expanding energy, expanding light. It was very descriptive and it was layered and one at a time. And they said to keep the last spirit helper, who I'm not going to name here, as a surprise. So I told the stories of my main guides, the ones that I'm aware of and the ones that I've been building a relationship with, and how they entered my life and what I feel like their purpose and intention is in guiding me. And I took them through this process of one at a time, bringing my guides through, and the power created and developed and grew. And then eventually the last communicator that wanted to come forward, which is the highest vibrational being I have ever encountered, came through. And I was having a palpable experience, and we went around the circle after, and people shares, like whether they had a profound experience or more subtle, everyone sensed the energy and this pulsating energy that was coming through. And sure enough, the person next to me had what I would consider a profound spiritual experience that was magical for them. And more than one person had a profound experience, but it was such a blessing from the spirit world. It created an energy bubble for the day that people just went on to go do readings all day for one another. And it was really powerful. And these are some of the blessings that the unseen world brings us. If you love the topic of spirit guides and, the unseen spirit helpers and the membership, the collective that I run for 6 years, all of July is dedicated to this topic. Practice circles, supportive exercises and inspirational podcasts on the topic. So if you want to get to know your own guides more intimately and start developing out this relationship more fully, this is going to be our focus next month in the collective. So we fast forward 3 years to 2023. And this is the story that was on my heart today that I wanted to bring forward. And I was at my first retreat in the woods of BC. We just hosted our 4th one less than 2 weeks ago. And I was really nervous because I had overthought it, probably overplanned it. It was packed. It was 28 people. I knew everyone. They were all in the collective. There was a lot of great energy. Everyone was so excited to see each other. This was probably, actually, I know that this was the first IRL anything post-pandemic for so many of us. And I was nervous because I was worried about my stage fright, which I'd had before the pandemic when I would talk live in front of groups. And though I'd been teaching online hundreds of classes over those years, for the first time I thought, will I have stage fright again? Because this is my first time talking in front of a group in person. And it didn't occur to me till I was on the edge of my bed that first morning. So I sat and I meditated. And, that's a way I regulate my nervous system. But I also surrender over to my inspirational mediumship, all my lived experiences, all the stories I have. I open up my heart and I surrender, and I just simply say, bring forward the most helpful stories, the most aligned information that will help the most people here. And I kind of use this as a way to kind of surrender and hand over the overthinking that I've been doing in the previous 9 months. And as I was on the edge of the bed, this gentleman, Leonard, popped into my awareness, who was my elder in my career prior to going full-time many years before. He had passed quite a few years before. And he popped forward into my awareness. And I remember saying, Leonard, what are you doing here? And he just said 2 messages to me, and I could see him so clearly. He looks a lot like my dad, actually. And I could see him clearly, and he said 2 things. He said, this retreat is a before and after. And I kind of knew in that saying that I was going to be a changed person, and my work was going to change after the retreat. This knowing came in as I heard these words. And then the second thing he said to me was, teach them about tobacco. And if you know me, and so many of you who listen do, you know that I'm always very hesitant to speak on behalf of culture because I didn't get to grow up in culture. I have been reconnecting to culture my whole life. And in truth, because of that, never feel like I can speak on behalf of culture. I'll always direct to different knowledge keepers I know. And in my knowing, as I heard teach them about tobacco, my heart closed up because of that pattern I'd been on forever. But then I remembered that, I was a spokesperson where we worked together on behalf of our respecting tobacco pillar. And then he also had quit colonized tobacco as well, and we had that kind of connection. And I looked over at my side table, and funny enough, I did bring my tobacco because one of my medicines is growing my own tobacco seeds for my own offerings as a way to restore balance. I've shared that many times. And I did bring my tobacco. And so what was interesting is I put the tobacco in my arms and I went down to the workshop space and I sat down in front of everybody, and everything I had planned went out the window, and I started the retreat sharing about tobacco, but my own personal experience with it, because I had that. And I felt safe sharing that. This was my lived experience. And what I notice and recognize, even retelling the story now, is that my teachings really changed after this experience because it became more storytelling in nature. And that's really what people come to my programs and my communities for, are the stories of my life and my experiences. And there's new ones every day, every week. And so I really kind of cracked open into more of like a storyteller from this experience as well. And in truth, and I can't say much right now, but I was thinking this morning as I was thinking about this, Leonard popping in as a spirit helper. You could say a guide, but I feel he more is here during this time. And this will all make a lot more sense as the year wraps up, because over the next, what are we in 2026? You're going to see this relationship become full circle. And I can't say more than this, but save the date, September 14th, and you will see the end of the story come into full circle. So when I share with you, Spirit drops things that unfold over years, and I can't see the story and the thread for years. This is what I'm talking about. So nothing in spirituality I find is instantaneous or instant gratification. It's usually an unfolding. This is what the spirit helpers put us on, are these paths that require patience, that require integration, that require awareness that your lived story is not just for you. If you asked me before 2023 if he was somebody who walked alongside me, I would have said no, because I was one of so many to him. He guided so many, thousands, but he was one for me, the one and only. So he was my one and only, and I was his one of many. So I would have thought that this connection would have been very one-sided, and it was a really deeply healing experience. So even my awareness of who walks alongside us started to expand through this experience. And I started to realize, we don't just have our departed loved ones that are invested in our lives and invested in our paths, our healing, our pursuing of the opportunities that come our way, our pursuing of our inspirations, the one who are even dropping in their inspirations. I mean, how many of us are continuing a legacy from our ancestors? I know that's a big life path of mine, and, resharing the story of my family. And so not only do we have these immediate ancestors around us, but we also have our guides. And, from my understanding, just through my relationship with Skylar, and I don't know this through any of the other guides in the realm that surround me, but he has said we've never lived a life together. So unlike our ancestral realm, where we have what you would say is maybe karma, soul karma, to kind of live out lifetime after lifetime, which is just one of my beliefs, and I'm open to be changeable on that. But we have these realms of spirit helpers that's their role. It's their whole existence is helping us through our soul expansion, through our own divine expansion, our own wisdom gaining. And to be honest, when I think about, my afterworld, and what I've said to Skylar is, I would love to do what you do. Like, how do I get into like this realm? And who knows, maybe there's opportunities on the other side to move beyond these different realms and these different roles as unseen spirit helpers. And then I noticed as I started to become a teacher through 2020, as a medium, just basically providing readings and solely readings from 2013 to 2020, when I started teaching, one of the most confusing things for me was that I felt like I was in a higher vibration. I felt more connected to the spirit world. I felt more of a medium when I was teaching versus when I was providing a one-on-one reading. And teaching really overtook my time and my life. And I started to realize, even through the different sitters I had through my life, so many of them came to me to understand their intuition a lot more. I could see how my spirit helpers were developing a teacher through even my mediumship journey, which was very different than a lot of the other mediums I knew. So as an example of this, I'm a very clairsentient medium, and my first level of awareness is being able to sense the energies of the unseen world around me. I have information that comes in through different parts and different areas of my body that means different things. And the most fascinating thing for me, especially when it comes to the people that Spirit brings to my practice, especially with that one-on-one work, is when I'm working with another medium, when I'm working with somebody who has dedicated their lives to the spirit world, whether that's through readings, part-time, full-time, or mentorship, anything that's like really compassion based and spirit guided and spirit led, is they kind of form this beautiful horseshoe of energy and presence around me, like from shoulder to shoulder. It's like this beautiful horseshoe. And whenever spirit aligns like that around me, I know I'm working with another spirit worker, and it's always the telltale sign. And I could see how they were trying to birth the teacher, but I felt like more connected and higher vibe when I was teaching than anything else. I had a friend who doesn't mess with mediumship. She actually says mediumship is low vibe. No wonder you feel higher vibe when you're teaching, because you're accessing higher vibrations, higher realms, higher perspectives. And I'm not saying this is like a hierarchy as like, oh, you haven't transcended to that. Like I say, I'm working on a belief right now that I believe we, even on the other side, have free will over what realms we might access or want to be connected to. Again, open to being changed around that. But this Inspire realm is probably one of my favorites that I get to experience. I believe that this is where inspiration comes from. I believe that this is where the great ideas that create the greatest change come from. And it does require a certain amount of privilege and space to be able to, connect in with this realm, which I encourage you if you just have 10 minutes a day, to just sit about what you're thinking about, a problem you're trying to solve. Like that, this is the realm that we're talking about. Is there a big decision in your life that you're trying to make that in your human, it just feels impossible to make? Maybe you're tired or burnt out and have decision fatigue. If you can even just dedicate 10 minutes a day, and I encourage longer if you can, to just center yourself and just try to expand your energy and your aura out to these realms, and just place a thought, place an intention. Help give me inspiration around this problem I'm trying to solve. Like, be as innovative as we possibly can around it, and just see what happens for yourself in this realm. And then most importantly, what I'm hearing is to share it, because this is an energy that needs to live on, and like a ripple in the lake, needs to be expanded. So they're saying share it, like write it down, even if you don't intend on putting it on blast on a blog or like Instagram. It's a way for the energy to continue to expand and the idea to continue to form. So something integrative after seeking that inspiration, because I feel like more will come through. But this feels like a practice that would be supportive for somebody out there. And then finally, the unseen world realm that I am still working towards, and I'm still trying to understand and also heal my own resistances through, is this God realm, this creator realm, this supreme being realm, which I even, have a hard time saying that, because there's a lot of loaded connotation behind that realm. There's a lot of misunderstanding, misinformation, around that realm. And it seems to be the realm that I've seen other people have ultimate faith in before even the guides, the ancestors, the inspirers. And that kind of blows my mind. I feel like I'm building up to that, but I've seen so many more people who come into my world who come from that realm of belief and are trying to unpack that in a way that they can believe that there's other beings that support us. So this is what's on my heart. I really started this with the memory of Leonard coming through for the first time. And so I suppose overall, if I were to say, how is this podcast episode, this video even helpful for you? Possibly there were 2 techniques I offered, or 2 assignments or homework assignments I offered through this that you might want to try on for yourself, because this has been so much of my own spiritual growth and maturity has been through the meditating, through the understanding my own energy, through that quiet contemplative and reflection time, and then taking that out to my community. So it's not just the contemplating in this kind of tunnel of self. It's like sharing these ideas and exchanging these ideas and gaining new perspectives and expanding your perspectives. And I believe that this takes us eventually to a world of wider understanding and acceptance of other people's ideas and their understandings and their stories. And to me, that is life. That is the life I have chosen for myself. And I feel blessed every single day that I get to live this day in and day out. So how I wanted to end today is I have been reading stories from my culture, Swampy Cree culture. I found a book of poems for Swampy Cree culture, but I wanted to share today instead my favorite story that Leonard ever told. And this is a captured story in writing. I have a copy of it. And I just wanted to end today in sharing you some wisdom from Leonard that really has inspired me a lot over the past decade. He told this story exactly in 2016, as far as I know. So this is The Rising of the Spirit by Leonard George of Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Prior to contact in North America, a prophecy was sent out from the Hopi people of the changes that would take place. They did this so that our people could protect their spiritual rituals, customs, and traditions. The prophecy went like this. A huge wave of white people is going to come, and with their coming, the Indian spirit will be wiped out to almost nothing. But when it reaches its lowest point, the spirit will begin to rise up again, and out of this new spirit there will not just be a red Indian, but white, black, and yellow. The beginning of this new rising will be signified by the eagle landing on the moon. In 1969, when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, his first words were, "The eagle has landed." The spirit has been rising ever since. One of my favorite stories that I ever heard Leonard tell, and I'm so happy that was captured in writing. I wish you all a beautiful day ahead, and my hope is that you receive signs from the unseen world that are undeniable and take you down a path of faith and expansion and all the things that help you live life in the best of ways.